So good afternoon everybody and welcome to this General Licensing Subcommittee hearing. First item on the agenda is to nominate a chair.
I'll nominate Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
Thank you, Jackie. Welcome to this committee. Apologies for the delay. We've been having some technical issues amongst other things. So what I propose to do first of all is to introduce, if we go around and introduce everybody, and then I will talk you all through the procedure. And then if you've got any queries about the procedure, you can raise them with me then, okay? So, as mentioned, I'm Councillor Alison Holmes. I'm chairing this meeting this afternoon.
Councillor Richard Hudson, one of the Vice Chairs of Licensing.
I'm Jackie Waring. I'm the Democratic Services Officer.
I'm Anne Walker. I'm representing the licensing team.
My name is Kennedy Nwokolo. I'm representing Environmental Protection Team.
Sorry, Lucy Withers, also from the Environmental Protection Team.
Good afternoon. My name is Stuart Gibson, Licence Agent representing the applicant.
My name is Shazay Manzo and I'm the applicant.
Hello, Simon French, a resident at City Walk Apartments.
Richard Scott, resident at City Walk Apartments.
Varsity solicitor observing proceedings.
Good afternoon, everybody. Michael McCabe, solicitor and the legal advisor to Derby City Council.
Thank you. So the procedure today is we begin by the licensing authority, which in this case is Anne. She will present the case to us. I'm really not sure why there's an echo on this microphone, but it's sounding weird up here, sorry. Then after she's stated her case, any clarification questions we can ask through me, any clarification questions that we may have of the licensing officer. Then we move on to the responsible authority, which in this case is the Environmental Protection Team, to state your case. Similarly, we will be able to ask questions to clarify anything that you may have. Then we move on to the interested parties, which is over here. I'll let you go whichever order you want. It's fine by me. And then again, we will be able to go through that with you and ask any questions that we may have, okay? Then we get to the applicant, and you will present your case, and similarly, we will be able to ask questions of you. Then I will ask in turn to sum up in the same order, then you will retire and we will make our decision. Okay? So I've just got to run down the agenda first. So item 2, any apologies?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3, late items, there are none. Item 4, any declarations of interest, please?
No.
Okay. So then we can now move on to item 5, application for a premises licence at Rich's Unit C, 2 City Road, Derby. And that's over to Licensing Officer Anne, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. The licensing team received a new premises licence application from SG Licensing on behalf of MYG Industries Limited for Rich's Unit C, 2 City Road, Derby, DE1 3RQ. The application form, plan and location plan can be found at Appendix 1. The application relates to the sale of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises Monday to Sunday, 12 noon to 02:30 hours, live and recorded music and late night refreshment, indoors only, Monday to Sunday, 2300 hours to 02:30 hours, with the proposed opening hours of the premises to be Monday to Sunday, 12 noon till 0300 hours. During the consultation period, conditions were agreed with Derbyshire Police, and these are listed in Appendix 2. One representation from the Council's own environmental protection team was received, and details can be found of that at Appendix 3. And 7 representations from other persons have also been received, and these are found at Appendix 4. After the consultation had ended, further information was received from SG Licensing on the 19th of November 2024 and was distributed on the 20th of November to all parties. This information was a list of agreed conditions concerned with public nuisance. These were some of the conditions suggested by Environmental Protection, but not all. In making its decision, the committee is obliged to have regard to the legislation, the guidance issued under Section 182 of that legislation, the Council's own licensing policy, and the Human Rights Act, and when considering all the information presented to it today.
So we're going to move on then to responsible authority, which is the environmental health team. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to give my representation from our side. The reason for objection is prevention of public nuisance, and the main reason basically is noise. I do believe, or we do believe, that the opening hours, which they've proposed till 3 o'clock, is what we liking to be a nightclub. Not a lot of premises in town are open till 3 o'clock in the morning, and we believe if premises close by finishes less than 1 o'clock, they'll all be moving down to these premises. The reason for the objection is noise from people coming to the premises, people smoking outside, music breakout from the premises, late at night. The ambient noise level within the area is really, really low at night time because it is a residential area. We believe if the opening hours are approved the way it is, we would have a lot of issues. Historically, we've had complaints from these premises, and summertime we had two complaints in the summertime for noise, and I believe the premises currently is open till 23 hours or midnight, I believe, one of them. So extending that to 3 o'clock is going to be worse for the residents. I do know not a lot of premises within the area have means to have their windows closed, which to allow them to enjoy adequate fresh air with the use of mechanical ventilation. So especially summertime, we would expect properties within the area to have their windows open. I do believe this premises is running as a shisha bar as well, which means 50% of the premises will be open, and they've applied to have live music, recorded music till 2:30 in the morning, and also late night refreshment and the sale of alcohol and consumption of alcohol in and out of the premises. Taking that into consideration, imagine having a live music in that premises with the doors and windows open. Music will travel far and wide, not just within the premises around the locality, but it will travel further than we expect. Saying that, there are still other issues we believe that will be concerned with customers coming in, driving their car, revving their car, also playing their own music, and also when customers finishes and they leave at 3 o'clock, there will be raised voices, probably antisocial behaviors on the street, and doing that, having that Monday to Sunday, is going to be, I believe, a nightmare for residents living within the area. So for that reason, I've recommended some set of conditions which can be considered. I believe the client has agreed to most of the conditions, bar two, which is the opening hours and the double door system, which is a lobby system that prevents music from breaking out from the premises. So that's all I have to say. If there is any clarification required, I'm happy to answer the questions.
Something that's not featured in all of this, obviously, we're always going to get the feature of noise, what comes into these applications. Are there any restrictions on the actual level of noise, what can actually be played at various hours, measured as decibels?
It is possible to technically set a noise limit via a noise limiter, but the problem alone is not just the music, it's also raised voices and noises from vehicles coming in and out. So it's not just the music only, but music is the main concern. So yeah, the answer to your question is possible to set a limit with a limiter, a noise limiter.
So in the same kind of principle as if this was like a concert, because there is live music proposed here, it's the same principle.
If, for example, the committee agrees, let's say we want to set the noise limit to 65 decibel or 70 decibel, we can set that with a noise limiter. An engineer will have to come and set it that once the noise level goes above 70, it will go down, it will switch off, basically, it will cut it off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you mentioned that there have been complaints already about this particular premises in terms of noise. Has there been anything possible to be done so far in terms of mitigation to try and alleviate any of that, or has that not been tried as of yet?
We had complaints, however, we do have a procedure in terms of noise investigation. We don't have nighttime service available for the council, obviously because of cost. So the procedure we have is we send letters out and all that, but in terms of the follow-up, the complainants didn't return the diary sheet, so we didn't have to move forward with the complaints. So basically, no mitigation was agreed with the premises, even though they received the letter, but we didn't get any further communication with them at that time.
I suppose what I'm asking is, did the complainant feel that their issues had been addressed at that time? Was it resolved, or was it unable to be resolved?
Like I said, we didn't have any follow-up. The procedure says fill in the diary sheet for 2 weeks and return it. So that wasn't returned, so no follow-up was done after that.
Do you have any questions that you would like to ask of the licensing officer? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for your comments. Just a couple of questions, if I may. You mentioned previous complaints that have been made regarding the premises and noise. Can you confirm, or do you accept, that those complaints were made in a time before this gentleman actually took control of the premises, with a previous, i.e., therefore, the noise complaints related to previous occupants of these premises, of which my client has got nothing to do with?
I'm not sure when your client took over. but I know we did have 2 complaints summertime, so I'm not sure when your client took over. So he can clarify when he took over.
This could easily be resolved if you could provide the dates of the complaint.
I think in the report it says May and June 2024. So what I noted.
My client took over the premises in October 2024. Sorry, 2023. We haven't got there. No, we are. Sorry, 2024. Sorry, 2024 October he took over. Last month. One further question, if I may. Listen carefully to what you've said. It would be helpful to the committee, I think, if you could tell us what you believe the business is. You speak of it, I mean, for example, do you believe this is to be a nightclub?
From my experience and what the information in the application, it does say it's going to be a restaurant and a bar and a shisha place, but from my experience, I believe it might be run as a nightclub, and we need to tread carefully to make sure the residents are protected. Basically, prevention of public nuisance, and that's why I have made an objection to this application.
Thank you. No further questions.
In your report, you recommend a lobby system to reduce noise, but in your response, the applicant's response, I can't see any provision for that. I was asking the environmental health, they put in there, they would recommend a lobby system to reduce noise, but in the applicant's response, okay, sorry. So when they speak about that, we can ask them then. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, so no further questions, thank you. So then we'll move on to the interested parties. So who would like to go first? Okay, so it's Mr.
Scott.
Thank you.
So I've lived in the City Walk apartments since they were built in 2008, and the premises have been used for various shisha and what have you developments. I know the gentleman says he only took over in October, and that's plain and fair. But whatever business has been run from those premises has, with no alcohol and no extended licence, has caused problems going forward, has always caused problems. Multiple events over the last, well, how long is it, 15 years, have caused issues to the residents. And now they're wanting to put an alcohol licence in as well, with extended licensing, is just the final straw for residents of City Walk and City Road, and also the flat that backs onto the property that's run, owned by the newsagents Richard Smith. So that's why we're unhappy with what they're proposing. I did make a representation to the police last week, a noise complaint, but obviously, and I have a crime number for that, but I haven't got that with me. So that was in this gentleman's tenure.
Yeah, hello, it's Simon French, as I say, a resident at City Walk, and I've lived there about 6-7 years. So I didn't experience the first shisha bar that mysteriously burnt down on the site, but the new building has had at least three different managements, very similar businesses, but as you've said, Richard, without alcohol, I think, although the last one did have alcohol but no licence. And we've had nothing but antisocial behaviour. Strangely, it's not so much in my opinion, the music from the night, from the building. It's far more the people coming out. It's the delivery drivers, if there's going to be delivery takeaway food, I don't know. But certainly it's the actual clientele. They double park right outside our flats, and to think that they're going to be coming out at like 3 o'clock in the morning. They open the car doors, we have the stereo switched on, they're talking, they're shouting, they're urinating in our doorway, which is pretty much immediately opposite. We've had all of this every time each business has opened. So I appreciate that the new management are not responsible for that. I totally get that. The problem is that they can't control the people that come out of the venue. And that's my biggest... I mean, the music is bad enough. And in fact, when the doors open, when there's music played inside and the doors open, then you do get it. You get wafts of loud music. When the back bifold doors are open, then the music bounces off the flood defence wall and comes back. So the music can be loud. We've phoned up on several occasions for previous businesses, and they have made an attempt to turn the music down, which has been good. But it's still an issue. But it's the antisocial behaviour that it seems to generate that is my main worry. We have people in the flats who work. My partner works shifts and has to get up at 5:30 in the morning sometimes. And so it's totally unfair to think that the business will be closing at 3 o'clock with all the noise that will ensue with people leaving the venue. It's totally unfair on the residents there. We've got families living there with young children. The complaints that you talked about before in May and June, it was horrific. And again, I appreciate it's not this management, I'm not blaming them at all, but there were all sorts of problems. We had children being woken up. It was awful with the noise. I appreciate that was summer and our windows were open. That flat's get incredibly hot. I think the environmental services guy, he pointed that out, that it gets incredibly hot. You have to have the windows open, and therefore the music was just, and the noise was just too much. It was ridiculous. This went on until 6 o'clock in the morning. In fact, it was probably a bit later than that. It was just crazy. So every business that we've had, every business also that's been there has failed, which is something else that I think is really worth pointing out. I think Mr. Gibson has actually applied for various licences on previous businesses. I think I'm right in saying that. So he knows how the businesses fail there. So I'm amazed that we're even still considering having it being opened as a shisha bar or a restaurant or a pub or a nightclub, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what we call it. We're still going to get the same people coming out, the same antisocial behaviour. The residents will again be disturbed. And there's a lot of residents there. And I'd just like to make one last point. Little Chester Ale House is a pub in Chester Green, just down the road. Their licence, I think, is restricted. They're able to open, I think, to 10:30 Sunday to Thursday and 11 o'clock Friday to Saturday. I think they've got strict... I don't think they're allowed to have live music at all. I don't think they're allowed to have recorded music in a very similar residential area. So I'd like people to bear that in mind, that is a licence that seems to work. I don't think they have complaints. Those hours are far more sensible. But the 3 o'clock is just an absolute nonsense, and it just will not work. Thank you.
Can I just say, I was awoken this morning by people leaving those premises at 12:30 this morning, and the noise went on for half an hour before they dispersed. So they were outside after exiting the building for half an hour this morning.
Yeah, thank you for your comments and submissions. If I don't know if you've seen the Appendix 3 of the papers, which is the environmental health's comments, and they make suggestions about limiting the hours of the premises. Would that, in your opinion, meet your requirements in terms of meeting some of your concerns, or of the more fundamental concerns than that?
If everything was done and dusted and shut by 11 o'clock, then that fits within the realms of other establishments that side of the river. Shut, done by 11, not a problem. It's that extra time that we have issues with.
I'll just expand on what Councillor Rawson's just said. I was going to say something very similar. We've got 3 of us here going to make a decision. We've got the public there. Your opinion is appreciated, that we've got to take into mind. We've got an application what says one thing and the professional advice saying something else. So if there is a compromise between all of this, because we will have to justify the decision, is that kind of the leaning what you're expecting out of this?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me? No. So we'll move on to your submissions, please, which we might need all these clarity questions then asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. What I'd like to do is hear from me in the most part, but I'd like to also hand over to the applicant in the middle of my submission, because he'll be able to best describe his business, and it's always better coming first-hand than second-hand through me. So I will break off and ask the applicant to jump in, but then I'll come back and carry on. Chair, I think it's very important from the outset, and there was a reason for my question to the Environmental Health Officer earlier. These premises are a restaurant. The application, I believe, I wrote it, I believe clearly states out that it is a restaurant. Food will be available at all times the premises is open, but it is seeking to provide regulated entertainment from 11 p.m, as you know, the deregulation and so forth. So from 11 p.m. onwards, to allow the ability to provide entertainment should it be required. This is not a 7-day-a-week entertainment venue. It just doesn't stack up. The numbers don't stack up for that. On a cold Tuesday night, you're not going to be sitting at 2 o'clock in the morning listening to some guy strum on a guitar with 2 people in the place. It just doesn't happen. But it gives you the flexibility to allow for likes of me to go along and say, could I book a table for 20 people because it's my 65th birthday or whatever else, and maybe we could then have a bit of entertainment. It gives you that flexibility. You'll know from the application that Friday, Saturdays and Sundays there's a commitment to SIA security staff, so it goes without saying that the applicant believes Friday, Saturday and Sunday to be his main hub of when he is going to provide entertainment to the general public. It'll trade as a restaurant, it has a bar, and it also has shisha to be provided. We would be quite happy to insert a condition, I've done this with other applications in the past, that basically says, and your legal advisor could tidy up the wording, but these premises will not operate as a nightclub. It's a valid condition, and should he break it, it's clear. You've broke a condition of your licence, and therefore the review procedure is in place. He's no intentions of operating as a nightclub. And I'd like to draw your attention, it's in the papers I sent in yesterday, and thank you for accepting these. I just thought it would be helpful to pull the agreed conditions for public nuisance together, because we had certain things that were put forward in the application. We had the police coming forward with public nuisance conditions, and we had environmental health putting forward some conditions. So I pulled them all together, and we've gone for the least case scenario. For example, the police said no rubbish after 11 o'clock, the environmental health said 10 o'clock, so we've gone 10 o'clock in these conditions that we've offered. But the point I want to draw your attention to in terms of is this premises a nightclub, a minimum of 70% of the floor space should be allocated for the use of customers sitting at the premises for either food, alcohol or soft drinks. That leaves 30% of the remaining floor space to be used as walkways for staff, the counter, the serving area, the bar. There isn't any room for dancing. It's not a nightclub, councillors, and I hope that is something you take on board today, because previous operations, I'm not sure what they operated as. I think I was involved in the very first application back in COVID days where we got a licence for these premises. But what's happened to them then, it's not really been down to myself. I've not been involved. But it's a different clientele is what I'm trying to say that they will have coming to these premises. And there is a reason why the applicant is looking for the hours. As I say, the regulated entertainment is there to entertain diners during and after food. Come for a meal, fine dining, sit there, have your meal, and then maybe kick back, have a nightcap, and listen to whatever has been provided. It's not a raucous get up and dance and scream and shout. In terms of the business model and where shisha plays a part in this, I'd like to hand you over to the applicant who can best describe that better than myself. Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to say hello to everyone. I'm completely new to this. I have no idea how to say anything, but I'll just describe the business model as it's best suited. Shisha in itself is a additive to food. It's not just shisha, it's not just drinking, but those are additionals that help a business potentially reach its success. And the act itself of shisha is a sit-down act. You don't stand up because there's coals involved, and there's equipment that needs to be placed. It's not a rowdy thing, it's not alcohol. You don't drink and you don't become loud, and there's a designated area for such. So, which would be the garden, which is next to the river on the back. So, itself, what we need is the hours, because itself, when you have the shisha, you sit down for an hour and two, and then you cap off. You don't move from that space for an hour and two. So the capacity itself is capped. You can't use that space is occupied. So there wouldn't be a lot of people. It'd be designated spaces. And in itself, it's a time that takes longer off. People finish off their shifts and stuff. They come in for shisha, taxi drivers, your local people. And then they come in at around 10, 11, and that's when they want a shisha, and they sit for 2 hours, 3 hours, so it extends off into 1 o'clock. Currently, obviously, we can't do that as such. Yes.
Thank you. A point worth mentioning, the absolute capacity of these premises would be 75 persons. Now, we all know what restaurants are like. You do not go to a restaurant and in the time where they throw you out, the capacity of that restaurant pour out onto the street at one time. Restaurants are not like that. If you were talking about a nightclub, you might have a case. But when you have a restaurant, people finish, they come at different times, they finish their food at different times, and there comes a point in the evening where that table cannot be reused just because there isn't enough time to turn it again. So the capacity is reducing as the night gets longer. So 75 people maximum would be the capacity, and that would not be the full capacity leaving at any one time. In terms of the premises, something again the Environmental Health Officer mentioned, there is air conditioning in place, so windows and doors can be closed. In the renovations that the applicant has done, which is a difference to what's perhaps gone on in the past, he's put double glazing in the premises now, so it caps or it prevents, further prevents the escape of noise. In terms of the environmental health conditions, we were not able to accept. As he's hopefully explained to you, the hours are quite important to this business model. It allows, as he spoke about, the shisha side of things, people with shifts coming to the premises and kicking back and enjoying a fine environment and having food and perhaps a drink, and also perhaps the shisha side of things. In terms of the lobby system, by the time that came forward, basically works had advanced to an extent where it just wasn't practical to go back and do that. The costs have, I think, a bit escalated on a budget, and to go back and then sort of change things and therefore impact on the seating area again, it's just not something that the applicant felt he was able to do. But every other condition the environmental health put forward, we've accepted, and it appears in this document that we worked with. It also states in that document that we agreed as one of the police conditions, as your officer has talked about noise limiters, there is obviously there's noise limiters that can work. There's also secured tamper-proof, get my teeth back in, secured tamper-proof access to setting the noise limits. So the applicant would be quite happy in conjunction with environmental health to set those speakers. It's worth pointing out as well, the speakers are
just this much bigger than my hand. The speakers from the previous owners that have come in and taken out. So the speakers that are left in the building are this much, and we're not looking to increase sizes because it's fine for a restaurant. I don't need music blaring out.
And the speakers all obviously point backwards into the premises. There's nothing outside. But that level could be set, the point coming back to, could be set in conjunction with environmental health, and then that would be the level, and it would not be exceeded. And that could be conditioned quite happily as well. I think it's important, as I keep coming back to, this guy's not trying to sneak a nightclub in at the back door here. He's operating what he believes to be a viable business. The objectors have mentioned why, because every business there has failed. He's aware of that. But he believes there's a market for what he's trying to put forward, and it's a totally different concept to what we've had there in the past. You've heard, in terms of objections, the one that really comes to, that is consistent, is the noise. Now, we've talked about noise limiters, tamper-proof devices, we've talked about double glazing, we've talked about setting noise levels. and that contains the noise from within the premises. But we've also talked about what kind of noise we're talking about. It's kind of, in the main, a lot of the nights it'll just be background music to restaurant goers, but when there is entertainment provided, they are provided through those speakers at a certain level, whatever that may be. So the noise from within the premises, I'm quite confident to say, will not be a nuisance to the local residents. The noise from people leaving, somebody has said, well, we can't control people when they leave. Well, the Act is quite clear. The applicant or the licence holder is responsible for the actions of customers within his premises or in the immediate vicinity of his premises. So he does have a responsibility when people actually step outside the door and go to leave. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where indeed most of the activity is planned to take place, there are SIA staff on duty. They will be utilised, and they have to stay half an hour after the premises has closed to the public. So they would have to be there till if you were minded to agree 2:30 licensable activity, 3 o'clock close, the SIA would be there till 3:30. And their duty at that point of time would be moving people on quickly and safely and quietly in conjunction with the dispersal policy, which would happily be provided. And that's to get them away from the premises. Others would be allowed to wait inside for taxis. Various agreements with local taxi firms. So if a taxi for 4 for Smith turns up, the SIA chap would stick his head in the door, Smith, taxi for 4 people would trot out, get in a taxi, away they go. It's not in his interest to pour people out onto the car park at the front of his premises and just say, not my problem anymore, I've closed, get on with it. He's well aware of his responsibilities of dispersing people from the premises quickly, quietly, and without noise nuisance. Anything else you've heard in objections tends not really to be an issue here. There was a play in the papers about get the police involved, they'll tell you what's what. Well, the police actually support the application. We negotiated with the police. I go to licence hearings up and down the country and I hear all the time that the guidance says we should place great importance on the police evidence when they're objecting to an application. Well, the same applies when the police don't object to the application. You should place great importance on the fact that police believe this is indeed an application that can be viable, and they have not objected to the hours. They were quite happy as long as we worked with them and agreed to the conditions, and a lot of the conditions they put forward, rewording of existing conditions, which is fine, but we agreed a set of conditions with the police that made them happy with the situation. The other thing you hear about is car parking and traffic. Not a licensing issue. It's a planning issue, but it's not one for the licensing committee as yourselves to get involved in on a day like today. Traffic is not something for your concern. That's your friends in planning to deal with that. So, Chair, I think I've covered, in essence, the main areas that we're putting forward for you today. You've got, as I say, an application that is specifically asking for a late hour, but it's not asking for the late hour for the reasons that perhaps people think. And I stand by once again saying that we'd happily have a condition that says these premises will not operate as a nightclub. That should give you some comfort that what the applicant is telling you today is how he intends to run his business and how the fact that it is not going to cause the public nuisance that I would say quite understandably, based on past experience, that the residents perhaps feel it might do, but it won't. Thank you very much for your time.
Sorry, I seem to be the only one with questions. Sorry? I'll ask, after I've asked my questions, then I'll offer you to ask questions. That's all right. So the times that you have applied for is 7 days a week. Do you intend to use those hours 7 days a week, or are they at your discretion, and that you may only use them 2 days a week or 3 days a week? What is your intention of those hours, if that makes sense?
I do not require the whole 7 days. Those 7 days give me the flexibility as mentioned before. So for event hires, for example, so if I was to hire up an event, in my tradition, we usually have big families, big events. We tend to hire out a venue for that sort of place. As mentioned before, Friday, Saturday being the main sort of areas where I can bring in the money at late night. That's where I'm going to have most of my customers. That's where I'm going to have most of my crowd.
Thank you. So the shisha, I'm afraid I'm very ignorant with. So that is undertaken outside, is it? And how big is that area?
I do not
So
know.
roughly how many people could be if they were all the seats were full? Say how many?
You could get up to 25 to 30 people in there.
That's in the outside space.
Outside
And is
space.
that at the back or at the front of the premises?
That's in the back of the premises, so opposite the river. So you have the backside, so you have the river, and then you have our garden, that's for Kidushisha, and then you have the main lobby, and then you've got upstairs, which is the seating.
Is that also used as a general smoking area, or is there a different area for general smoking?
That's also used as a smoking area, general smoking area. So it would be outside and out the back, so not in front of the premises, not outside on the street.
And have you asked that to be a licensable area, or are you not allowing drinks out? You're not selling drinks out of there, are you? You won't be selling any drinks outside?
No.
But they can be taken if they want to, okay. Are you able to, would you be willing in some form of conditions to provide a telephone number for anybody on the premises for complaints from, just imagine some things happening outside that you were unaware of that anybody could immediately contact you with? Would you be willing to provide that?
Yes.
Definitely, Chair. And even, you might say, well, it's not practical, but even an email address, because some people feel a little bit nervous about picking up the phone at a time where I want to complain, but I'm scared to complain. Yeah. It's often easier for somebody to be able to sit down and actually send an email directly that would go to this chap or whoever's in charge of the day, because it's a little bit more, well, it's easier to do, I think. It's less stressful to do that. Not just push them into a telephone call, which a lot of people may think, well, I won't bother because I can't take the hassle.
No, I was just, I mean, both would be fine, but I was just thinking like an email wouldn't get somewhere till the next day, and if it was something there and then that needed immediate attention, your phone would probably be in your pocket.
Yes, we could do a messaging service as well, so it would be a direct message and that could be on display. Yep.
Yeah, it's just to ask for a bit more information really in terms of controlling the outdoor area, and the residents have detailed examples of some of the antisocial behaviour in the past, albeit not whilst yourself has been running the establishment, but for example, if there were people playing loud music in the car park as they were leaving, or causing, talking loudly, littering, as some of the examples that we've been given, how would you deal with those issues of antisocial behaviour that were occurring in your car park after closing time?
We do have door staff put in place, so obviously we would let them know that it's okay if they want to enter back into the premises, go back into the garden. That's the quietest spot for them, so they can be moved back to an outdoor area where it's quieter, and obviously people putting out music in the car park will be reminded that this is a residential area, and they will be reminded.
Just in that, it's a noise issue that you're raising, and it's a matter of the noise issue that I omitted to mention. In terms of controlling noise outside, the applicant is quite happy to have conditioned that the last entry time to the premises would be 1 o'clock. So even though premises we're asking to stay open and serving till 2:30 and out by 3, nobody can gain entry after 1 o'clock. And I think that takes away some of the fears. I think maybe your environmental health officer mentioned that people will come having been somewhere else because there's a chance for a late drink. It takes that threat away. So if you're not in by 1 o'clock, you don't get in.
I'm just going to refer to item 5, appendix 5, the agreed conditions. You've got, where am I? Just going to bring it back up. I was looking at something else. You've got the licence holder, which would be you, and you've got a designated premises supervisor, which is basically a duty manager. So the licensee and the duty manager is the same person. Is there somebody to cover all of these hours that are proposed, regardless of if it's the recommendation or what's been applied for?
Yes, indeed.
Because could you be on site all of the time?
No, I'll deal with this first of all, and then you can come in, please. No problem. The role of DPS, Designated Premises Supervisor, is one person named on the licence who has a personal licence who is responsible for the day-to-day sale of alcohol from that premises. That is, in this case, the applicant himself. He has a personal licence. He's put himself forward as the DPS. The DPS does not have to be on the premises all the time. If you think of a convenience store that's open in 7 in the morning to 11 at night, 7 days a week, you can't work 112 hours a week. It's just not possible. But he is still responsible. So he then... the only people allowed to sell alcohol in this country are personal licence holders, but personal licence holders have the authority to give the authority to non-personal licence holders to sell on their behalf, if that makes sense. So yes, he will have duty managers, senior staff, that he will be able to leave the premises in their capable hands, because this chap can't be there all the time, but he ultimately is the responsible person. Would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up a point that Mr Gibson made about the nightclub. The nightclub is a red herring. I'm not quite sure why he made such a thing of it. It's never been a nightclub. We've never had dancing in that premises. It's always and only ever been a shisha bar that has served food and has been advertised as a restaurant, sometimes with alcohol, sometimes without. It stays open, it has stayed open until 1, 2 in the morning, and these issues have happened. We've had doormen before. The last management had doormen. They did nothing to stop any of the noise outside. And it's not just from the car park, it's from the road. It's from City Road, right outside our flats. So people double park on the double yellow lines, up on the pavement, right outside our windows, and that's where the noise happens. It's away from the premises. Now, I know that, again, we've talked, it's not your tenure, I understand that, it hasn't been. But it's never been a nightclub. I'm not concerned about it being a nightclub. It never has been. When I read the planning application, it didn't even make reference of a nightclub. So don't be fooled by Mr Gibson talking about the fact that it was a nightclub, but now it's not going to be. It's never been. That's my point.
Thank
Is there
you.
a question
So
there?
I think that came from the environmental services, that the suggestion of the nightclub. I think that's where the confusion was, sorry.
In the statement you state here, music and speech must be inaudible within the nearest noise-sensitive premises after 11 o'clock at night, and during all noise-generating events. How are you going to do this? It's point 4 on what was received from Mr Gibson this week.
Music and speech must be inaudible within the nearest noise-sensitive premise after 2300 hours during events that are taking place. Well, one, windows and doors close at 11 o'clock on Friday, Saturdays, and if you were to grant the hours on a Sunday as well, door staff would be in control of the doors, access and egress doors anyway, so they wouldn't just willy-nilly be opened and closed at random. They would be monitored by one of the door staff. We spoke about this earlier with the applicant. And the levels we've already spoken about today, the levels of sound, I won't use noise, the levels of sound coming from the speakers will have been set by the Environmental Health Officer to be of that level that is not going to cause a nuisance to noise-sensitive premises, which I believe would be yourselves, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but you're about 40 metres the other side of the opening of the front of the premises. About that? Is that fair? Okay, so from that point of view, those would be the considerations taken into account when those noise levels are set. And it may be the noise levels are set, have to be set at a lower level after 11 o'clock at night to fulfill that condition. Because remember, Chair, conditions are not taken or offered lightheartedly. Every single condition is enforceable, and if any applicant breaches a condition of a licence, as you well know, and I haven't come across it happening, but in the Act it says you can have an unlimited fine and or 6 months in prison for breach of a condition of your licence. So it's not something to be taken lightly. So an applicant putting forward saying, I agree to these, he's going to adhere them and uphold them. Hope that answers your question.
How will the shisha work? Because I do know if shisha is taking place, you have to have the doors and windows open, how do you intend, you're agreeing to a condition saying external doors and windows will be closed, and then you're still providing shisha. How will that work? Knowing that when you're having shisha, the doors and windows will be open. How does that? That's where the confusion is.
Yes, we have a garden area, so that's more than 70% open. That's in the back, and that only has one speaker, so it's minimal noise in there. So it's already open, so you have your shisha there, so you wouldn't need the use of doors or windows because you have open space. I'm not sure if I understood your question properly, but I believe that's what I asked.
I'm a little bit confused with your answers. I know there's a big bifolding door at the back. I'm guessing shisha you'll be having shisha at that place, that area, where the big bifolding door is.
Do you speak about the shisha right before the garden, or because the doors open into the garden and that's the garden space, so that's open space, so you can have shishas there?
So basically the doors will be open? No, the doors
would not be. They would not be open.
Okay.
But you have, sorry, just to interrupt, you've also heard from the applicant earlier that it's shisha only in the garden. There's no alcohol to be taken outside, so it's purely a shisha area. So it's not, it's purely that, and people are not able to take drinks out there as well.
Can I ask a question, Chair? With reference to the inaudibility one that's just been mentioned, the condition, can we just tighten it up a little bit, because at the moment it's unenforceable, it's a bit woolly, inaudible where? At the nearest place, or outside, down the road, where? At the moment it's a bit unenforceable.
Thank you, Anne. Good point. So I guess we can discuss that in our deliberations anyway, can we? Okay.
That condition arose from conditions put forward by the police, which we agreed to, so it is a police condition that they've used.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no further questions, we will sum up.
I've got one question.
Sorry, yeah.
Who was the DBS supervisor last night or this morning? Whose job was it to clear those people away that woke me at 12:30 this morning?
The applicant can come in a minute. There isn't a DPS at the moment because the premises is not licensed. So there is no designated premises supervisor. My understanding, and he can come in and contradict or whatever, what you witnessed, I believe, last night were staff members waiting for Ubers to come and pick them up.
No Ubers picked them up. I was there, I witnessed it. They were outside making the noise, woke me up. And if that's how things are going to go, it's only going to happen on a more regular basis. I've got videos, I've got photographs, which can be submitted to anybody who wants to see them.
I'm not really sure what much more I could do for staff that's going to leave waiting on a car, or to get into a car and leave, because that's past my shift. We're not open until those late hours, so I can't really control them past that hours of 12, because that's already closed, the premises is closed. I'm not sure I could do that.
You said customers will wait inside for taxis, but staff have to wait outside for taxis.
Yes, because we don't operate on those hours because we don't have the license.
The rule should apply to both staff and customers in terms of noise.
Sorry, if I could just interject. I think the issue is when customers ring a taxi, the premises are still open, so they're able to wait inside. Whereas when staff leave the premises, obviously they don't leave until the premises are closed. So I guess going forward, maybe some staff training on also how to.
I can make certain that there's a key holder or someone with a position that is the last one to leave, so staff can wait inside before the taxis come. So it'd be the same process.
just to clarify, you did make a statement that there's a small speaker outside. Part of one of the conditions says no speakers are allowed outside. Just to clarify that.
And that can be moved, that's no issue. It's a small speaker connect, we can move that out.
To clarify, there will be no speakers outside the premises. You're quite correct. There is a condition there that says no external speakers, and there will be no external speakers, so that will be taken care of.
Thank you. So we'll move to sum up then now, please. So back to the licensing authority to sum up, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, nothing to add really. You've heard the information from the applicant, from the other persons, the residents affected and the responsible authority. Just say the options open there are to grant the application, modify the conditions of the licence or reject the whole or part of the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Environmental Services. Do you want to make yours?
I believe I've made my points. The concern still remains in terms of the opening hours. I believe if the application is granted as proposed, I believe we would have issues from this premises. If the committee agrees with what I've proposed, then I believe we would prevent public nuisance as much as we can till midnight. I would be recommending if that premises open till midnight, basically just to prevent public nuisance from loud music and raised voices late at night.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, next. Want to sum up?
I, as a director of the block, believe the application is wholly inappropriate for the residential area that is City Road, and strongly recommend that you reject the application.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that for me personally, I'm genuinely not against any business in that premises. Honestly, it's great for business works, that's absolutely fine. We have great relations with the other businesses that are in that little complex area. I just think that with a lot of people, myself included, working full-time, Monday to Friday, to be disturbed at night, to have your sleep interrupted, which I think will happen, is just, the licence is wholly inappropriate. Certainly these hours are just ludicrous. It's a residential area. It isn't a city centre area, which is where this business should be, if they want to run it like that. So I'd like to draw your attention again to Little Chester Ale House. Their opening hours in a residential area seem to work. And that's what I would like you to consider. Thank you.
Mr. Gibson. Yeah.
Just to let everyone know, we're not a chain, we're not anything big. We're a couple of families that joined together and thought we'd get a restaurant just because that's where our knowledge comes from. To the left of us is a car park, to the right of us is a car park, behind us is the river, in front of us, in 40 metres across, is your residential area. And even then we're trying to put everything within the noise capacity, within the limits of what we can do. There's a lot invested that we can't just up and get and start somewhere else. If we wanted to open in town, it'd be a completely different ball game. And that would be a club, but we didn't open in town because it's not a club, it's a restaurant, and neither is it holding similar activities. Thank you.
You've got a flat that backs onto you. You've got a flat that backs onto you. It's not car park. You've got a flat that backs onto you.
Sorry, we've moved on to summing up now. We're not doing that. Carry on.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add slightly to what the applicant has said, his very heartfelt submission there. You'll be aware this is an application we've put forward with a number of conditions. We've gone, I think, over and beyond in a lot of areas to offer comfort. And to come back to my point that he's aware that by putting that in writing, he is now duty bound to adhere to those conditions. And if he doesn't, he'll be back before you in what's called a review hearing. We're quite sure of that, and he's quite sure of that as well. So he's not taking on or just agreeing to anything for the sake of getting this through. He's agreeing to things because he wants to work with the community and he wants to have the opportunity to run a successful business. Where we're going business-wise in the next year, I don't know. I don't think anybody does, but it's going to be a challenging time. And I think a guy like him is prepared to put his money where his mouth is and say, look, I'm going to have to give this a go, and I'm going to provide employment for the area, and I'm going to provide a service and a good service for the area, certainly for, as he spoke about, the Asian community, taxi drivers, etc., that are coming out late after shifts to have somewhere to go and relax, I think should be applauded. And I would ask that you grant the application with all these conditions and additional ones we've put forward for you today, and give the guy a chance. Thank you very much.
Just in terms of the environmental health officer, in terms of the noise, you've suggested a condition that the premises be allowed to open until midnight. Is that 7 days a week, are you suggesting?
Yeah.
And is that, when you say open till midnight, would that be last orders at 11:30 and then out by midnight? And how would you work it? Because you can't, you know, it's licensed premises. So.
Opening hours till midnight, regulated at entertainment probably till 11:30, and so people can be out by midnight.
So last orders 11:30,
Yeah.
so half an hour's drinking up time, to use the vernacular.
Yeah.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Okay, that concludes this meeting then. So we will retire, make our decision, and unfortunately, because we're late today, the decision may not be till Monday now. It will be emailed out. If everybody makes sure Anne's got everybody's email address. Thank you very much for your attendance and for your submissions today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.